I've got the new Sony 24-70mm f2.8 G Master Mark II here, and I used it basically for the entirety of my trip to Las Vegas for WPPI, and I have some thoughts on it, as well as thoughts on whether you should get the GM Mark I or the GM Mark II. But first, I had a question that I wanted to answer. Do you need a 24-70mm lens? There are lenses that can produce incredible bokeh like wide aperture primes, lenses that can show incredibly intricate details through macro photography, lenses that can produce incredibly unique anamorphic footage with character, but then there's a lens that's just useful. Almost boring in how versatile it is. It's like a Swiss Army knife, a jack of all trades and master of some. And that's what the 24-70mm focal length is. It's the most quintessential lens in my kit, yet it's really not the most exciting lens. The f2.8 aperture isn't going to produce jaw-dropping bokeh, but it's enough bokeh to create beautiful portraits. The focal range of 24-70mm lets it cover wide-angle shots to establish scenes and locations, while still being able to cover close-up portraits and get detail shots. If you shoot portraits, weddings, events, landscapes, street, products, travel, you'd get a lot of use out of this lens. Because in most situations, the zoom is necessary to get that shot quickly, while an f2.8 to f4 aperture is really the right balance between subject separation and sharpness. The original Sony 24-70 f2.8 G Master is one of the most useful lenses I own. It's definitely the lens that's made me the most money, and it's the lens I've owned the longest. So for me, I would say, yeah, I need a 24-70mm lens. But you know what else you need? The sponsor of today's video, NordVPN. I worked in the ad tech industry for 4 years, and I can tell you that collecting your data is the name of the game for these online data brokers. And that's why protecting your privacy online is more important than ever. That's why I was happy that NordVPN reached out to sponsor this portion of the video. NordVPN allows you to browse the internet anonymously, encrypting your data and masking your IP address. It's quick and easy to use, protects your data when using public Wi-Fi, and lets you browse the internet from anywhere in the world, giving you access to shows and movies that might not be available in your country, and even lets you book travel for cheaper. Not only that, but it also offers a suite of threat protection features that proactively block malware, intrusive ads, and stops intrusive tracking. The threat protection feature even works when you're not connected to a VPN server. If you're interested in protecting your privacy and data online, NordVPN is the way to go. And right now you can get the exclusive birthday deal at nordvpn.com/𝗙𝗢𝗟𝗡 to get the 2-year plan plus 4 extra months and additional gifts. The best part is it's risk-free with NordVPN's 30-day money-back guarantee. Okay, so back to the lens we're focusing on in today's video. Let's start by taking a look at the image quality. And while we're at it, we're going to compare it to the original Mark I lens, and in the end, I'll share my thoughts on if it's worth getting the Mark II or saving some money and getting the Mark I. First, I wanted to share some photos from the WPPI trip that I took with this lens, and I can't get over how they turned out. In real-world scenarios, this lens produces incredible photos, and thanks to the versatility of the zoom, it was the only lens I needed the entire trip. From taking wide shots to show off the beautiful Nevada scenery to tight shots to focus on people, animals, and objects. Okay, so jumping into test charts, you can see that the updated Mark II lens is just outstanding. On the left, we'll show the Mark II, and on the right, we'll show the Mark I. As you can see, the centers and corners are tack sharp wide open at f2.8, and as you stop down through the aperture range, it maintains excellent sharpness all the way through. Now, don't get me wrong, the original 24-70 GM was already a top tier lens, but the Mark II makes the original look soft. This is consistent on both the 24mm wide end and the 70mm tight end. Taking a step back, we can see that the original 24-70 had pretty solid vignette control with only a little bit of vignetting and loss of light in the corners, but when you switch over to the GM Mark II, you can see that it performs even better. Lens flares, as typical in basically all of the GM lenses, is extremely well controlled. While flaring is present and I was able to get it to produce some flares and ghosts, the contrast is still maintained and the image looks pretty solid even against harsh flaring scenarios like shining a flashlight directly into the corner of the frame. And chromatic aberration is another thing that GM lenses handle quite well. In my tree branch and book tests, you can see that there is the slightest amount of chromatic aberration in the autofocus areas, but handled to a degree where it's only noticeable if you pixel peep. In videos, that shouldn't ever really be noticeable, while in photos, you can easily correct this with the click of a button. Distortion, on the other hand, is something that is usually more prevalent in zoom lenses. And unfortunately, that is still noticeable in the Mark II lens as it was in the original GM lens. On the wide end, you'll see that the lens shows some barrel distortion, while on the tight end, you'll see that the lens shows some pincushion distortion. Fortunately, in photos, a quick lens profile correction is a one-click solution to this issue, and in video, just about every new Sony camera includes in-camera distortion control, so you'll never even notice that this is an issue. All right, let's talk about autofocus real quick. Of course, Sony knocked it out of the park as usual. There's gonna be no autofocus motor noises, there's gonna be no autofocus hunting since this is a first-party lens, and best of all, if you're looking for the best autofocus performance for your Sony camera, this lens isn't going to disappoint. If you're going to be using this lens for video, it's going to do a great job tracking your subject as you can see, whether they're moving fast or slow. And if you're going to be using this lens for photos, it's going to keep up whether or not you have the A7C Mark II or the Sony A9 III shooting at 120 frames per second. All right, let's take a look at the lens itself now. It's actually gotten quite an overhaul compared to its first generation counterpart. While it sports the usual premium build quality we're familiar with when it comes to G-Master lenses, like the incredible material, the nice focus and zoom ring, and autofocus manual focus switch, it now has an aperture ring with a click-declick switch and an aperture lock switch to lock it into auto or manual aperture control. And instead of a zoom lock switch to keep the lens locked at 24mm so it doesn't extend the barrel when you don't want it to, it has a zoom speed switch, which allows you to smoothly zoom the lens or switch it to tight, which basically locks it at any focal length. Though it doesn't actually lock it, it just increases the friction to turn the ring quite a bit, so you need a lot more force to change your focal length. On top of that, the Mark II now sports 2 custom function buttons as opposed to the original's 1. Overall, these updates are great and I'm a fan of the changes, but that's not actually what stood out to me about the build quality of this new lens. You see, the original 24-70 is a great lens, but it's honestly a heavy lens. When you're shooting a 4-hour event with the original 24-70, it got pretty heavy, especially if you had a full-size speedlight attached to it. And when you pair it with a compact camera like the A7C Mark II, it makes the camera extremely front heavy. But the new GM Mark II is about 10% smaller and 22% lighter. That's almost 200 grams or half a pound lighter. That might not sound like much, but when you hold these two side by side, the difference is noticeable. So let's talk about the price. The updated Sony 24-70 f2.8 G-Master Mark II costs $2,298, while the original Mark I costs $1,698. That's a difference of $600. If you were looking to buy one of these lenses, which one should you get? If you're running a photography business and this is a tool for you to make money, then trust me when I say that this is going to be a lens that you use a lot. And from the perspective of this being a business investment, for me, I would go with the GM Mark II. It's sharper and better at controlling those artifacts, even if marginally means that you're gonna get a better product at the end of the day. And the fact that it's lighter means that you're gonna be less fatigued and able to shoot those longer events, whether it's 4 or 8 hours long. And for that reason, you should go for the newer and better GM Mark II. But if you're looking at the 24-70 as like a hobby lens, you just want it for fun, for your travel, and you're not using it as a business investment, and you're okay with it being a little heavier, I would go with the original Mark I, especially because it's $600 cheaper, and if you're okay with looking around for a cheaper option, like a used option on eBay, you can get it for like $1,000 cheaper, somewhere around like the $1,300 ballpark. If you're interested in checking either of these lenses out, links will be in the description down below. All right, that's it for this one. Let me know in the comment section down below what you guys think of the 24-70 focal length range. Is it something that you love or something that you hate? And if you found this video entertaining or helpful, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. And as always, I will see you in the next one. Peace.